Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Reawakened Mom podcast. And I am here today with Megan Sumrell, and she is a former corporate executive turned entrepreneur. She is the CEO and founder of the Pink Bee, which I just love that name. It's so fun.
I love it too.
How did you come up with that? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, there's a lot of backstory to it. So
Oh, okay.
I won't tell you all of it, but I will tell you why the pink and why the bee. Pink is my favorite color. And in my corporate days, early on, this is probably about 20 years ago, I was speaking at a software conference and I was backstage and it was mostly men. And the guy asked me if I had on a light pink jacket with my black pants, like as a suit. And he asked if I had a different jacket because number one, it was distracting. And number two, no one would take me seriously.
What?
And in my younger days, the insecurity kicked in and I obliged and changed my jacket, which is why now I always wear a pink jacket on stage. And so I love pink. I love being able to lean into feminine power. So, and then the B came from a former company, a software company I co-founded. We had a lot of bees in it, and people know me with the bees. So I had to keep the bee part of the
Oh.
brand.
Oh, I love that. What a great I did not know that. And I put like pink lipstick on for you today. So I was like, I have to wear
It's
my pink
unusual that I am
lipstick.
not in a pink shirt, but usually
I
it's
was thinking the same
behind the
thing.
summer fall. Yeah.
I know. I was thinking the same thing, but that's okay. All right, before we dive into all the amazingness that you're going to share with us today, I would love to know a little bit more about you. Like tell us about yourself, like mom life, anything you want to kind of share with us before we jump into all the goodness.
Yeah, so I have a 13-year-old daughter, so I am navigating the worlds of middle school and teenagehood and all of that goes with
Mhm.
it. I am married to my husband for almost 18 years. We have two dogs. I'm behaving well, praying will behave during our call today because one is only 5 months old. My parenting journey has been, I think, like every mom out there, just ups and down roller coaster ride. The last 3 years have been really unique for us as we went through 2020, as everyone did. It ended up our reentry back into school was a brand new school, and things went very poorly. So I actually homeschooled for a year and a half,
Wow.
which was not on my plan of life things to do.
Yeah.
But as moms and parents, we do what we need to do. And so just a couple months ago, we have her back in-person school. So readjusting to all of that. And I firmly believe and know that we would not have been able to have navigated all of that while me still keeping the company running without practicing what I teach in terms of how I plan and manage my time. And I just bring this up because I hate the word work-life balance. That's why I lean on work-life harmony,
Mhm.
which means sometimes we have to be more present in one area of our life than others. And so for me, that meant stepping into my mom role a little bit more. But when managed the right way, you don't have to leave everything else behind either.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that too, because I mean, that was a hard time for, all kids. And, then having to come in and take on this role of being a teacher and then your parent teaching you, that's never an easy thing. And then being a
But middle
teenager,
school.
middle school, I mean, mine just exited middle school. So my last one. So I have a 14-year-old that's a freshman currently and a 17-year-old who's a junior. So that middle school age, like that was one age when I went into teaching that I was like, I never want to teach middle school. I feel like that is like, it's such a crazy age with all the hormones and all the changes. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's
Yeah.
a lot. How is she adjusting? Is it going well so far?
The happiest we've ever seen her. It's
Oh, that's so great to hear.
found the perfect fit for her.
I
So
love it.
it's
Good.
been good for everybody all around.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that because, you were on the podcast before and you were all about those systems. You spent 20 years in corporate America and you did all of these amazing things. Is that what brought you to want to teach this on your own and be your own entrepreneur? Like, was it your own struggle back
Yeah.
in the day with being like, I have no organization, I'm overwhelmed?
Yeah, and it's funny because, well, way, way back, Megan, my mom always likes to tell people I would have been an Olympic gold medalist for procrastination and disorganization. I was not born this way, which I like to share to people because they think you either are or aren't, right? But
Yeah.
learning how to plan and manage and control your time is actually a learned skill. Just sadly, it's not being taught, right? We don't teach it to our kids. It's not being taught in college. I happened to land in a career where it was required of me and they invested in teaching
Mm.
that. So I have, as part of my over 20 years in the software corporate space there, I have a bunch of training and certifications all around project management, optimization, systems, processes, planning, all of that. So that is where I really learned these skills and the brain science behind them, which is really impactful. So I got married a little bit later, had my daughter later, and I'd been using the same productivity slash planning system for like 20 years before becoming a mom. And it
Yeah.
worked great because I'm old enough, I'm 50. I am old enough that I was working before smartphones, before laptops. It was a big deal to have inter-office email, right? Meaning distractions were few. You didn't take work home with you. It wasn't an option. And so having these compartmentalized lives was very easy. And so the very traditional, very masculine time management systems work awesome in that kind of an environment.
Mhm.
Well, then I found myself juggling work and motherhood and toddlerhood and all of that. And I just had a very pivotal day when someone asked me innocently at the park, this random mom, she's like, "So what do you do for fun?" And I couldn't come up with an answer. And it rocked me to my core, but thankfully set me on a path to go, this isn't working the way
Yeah.
I'm trying to manage my life of wake up, get the list, get it all done, collapse into bed, then feel guilty for what didn't get done. Then the 3 a.m. wake up session, list making mode of all the things we didn't want to forget about, right?
Yeah.
Into the outside world, like I looked like a woman who had it together, right? I got all the things done. Things most of the time weren't falling through the cracks, all of that. But on the inside, I become someone who couldn't even answer the question, what do you do for fun? I didn't know myself anymore. And I was really struggling to manage this identity of mom versus Megan.
Yeah.
And it was a very challenging time. So thankfully, I was like, "Man, you do this for a living. Like you go into organizations and look at the way everything's being managed and you find a better way to do it. So why don't you take what you've learned and apply it to your own life?"
Yeah.
So that was kind of the start of me building what is now the top framework. No intent of doing anything with this other than rescuing myself.
Mm.
And so some colleagues started noticing, they're like, you seem different. Like, did you join a gym? No, happy. I am finding my like I have time for me and all of that. So some folks asked if I'd teach them what I was doing. And long story short, that turned into me loving this and feeling like this was my calling. And so I left my corporate life behind and went all in to really bring this to women all over the world.
So how did that start? Like, what was it? Like, I mean, has it morphed, I'm sure, so much from when you first started? Or like, were there a couple things that you took that were so basic that you were like, these were the things, these were the few steps that I took to have that woman say, what's different about you?
Well, it was, I would say initially, one of the things that I have everyone look at as well when I work with them through the program is taking a step back and thinking about, at the simplest term, what are your priorities, but from an angle of what are your core values?
Hmm.
Like, what is it that at the end of the day, this is what matters most? Put the to-do list aside, really back to yourself. Like, what is it that matters most? And 9 times out of 10, that's never reflected in our calendar ever. Because our
Hmm.
calendar is full of things that are coming at us and obligations to others, appointments with others, commitments with others. And so I flipped the order. First, I started adding things to my calendar that don't usually show up in people's calendar, but then I started flipping the priority of the order in which things go in there,
Yeah.
and then embracing this idea of creating appointments with myself. So for most people, we operate from a calendar that shows all of our traditional appointments, right? Stuff for our kids, our doctor's appointments, dentist meetings at work, whatever. And then separate somewhere, or usually scattered in lots of places, is the to-do list,
Hmm.
right? And so when we learn how to take the traditional to-do list, but get it represented in our calendar, what it allows us to do is get a much clearer picture of how much time do I really have, so that we don't get overbooked, we don't get overscheduled, and we're able to see, if I say yes to this thing, then that means the time that I need for myself to be the person I want to be doesn't happen.
Hmm.
So before, my right now, the kind of basic 5 things that should go into everyone's weekly plan, and then we learn how to do a 10-step advanced one, is first, what are those current commitments that everyone has? The appointments, the meetings, the carpool, the all of that. Second, and most moms do not put this on their calendar, and it's really important to understand, is what I call my unavailable time, or like momming time, where you're awake, you're in motion, things are happening, but you're not going to get those traditional to-do list items done.
Hmm.
Like for me in the morning, I'm walking dogs, we're making breakfast, we're packing lunches, we're driving to school. Usually none of that time is blocked off on your calendar.
Yeah, it's so
Well, now we
true.
have to visually represent it. And same for me in the afternoon, like from when I leave to go do school pickup, the afternoons, I still don't really know what we do every day between school and dinner. It's like there's a lot going on, right? And to recognize that, and to stop trying to think, oh, I'm going to get a ton of stuff done between 4 and 5:30. No, I'm not. Nothing's going to get done, because there's going to be some need from me that I want to be able to be present for. And so I actually represent that in my calendar. So it's reminding me, Megan, you don't have as much time as you think you do.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that goes in, back to those core values and priorities, before I put any of that to-do list stuff on my calendar, is I make sure there's appointments on my calendar with myself to do the things that allow me to feel rested, to connect with Megan and not mom, and to be able to answer the question, what do you
Mm.
do for fun, when
Yeah.
someone asks me that. Once that is in my calendar, now and only now do I then go in and start adding in all the things that are competing for my time externally.
Hmm.
And when we do that, it's not a game of how do I get more done? It's what is it I need to let go of
Hmm.
and be okay not doing, to support the things that are most important to me right now.
Yeah.
So, people will still ask me, oh, you're so productive, how do you get so much done? And I'm like, chances are I do a lot less than you do. But the things that I do are the things that are most important to me, and then I'm able to give them the time that they deserve.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I know when I was like a younger mom and what I thought I needed to do and all the things I said yes to. And it was things that I was like, oh, I really want to do this. And then I would get in and then I would start to feel resentful. And then I would feel like I had no time. And then I would be up at till like 12 midnight or 1 a.m., like trying to get things done and then wake up to my kid coming and waking me up in the morning. And, the vicious cycle over and over and over again. And it
Um,
was just,
yeah, the things I thought that I would rock
yeah,
as a mom, it turns like I can remember the first field trip I went on, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be the present mom that goes on the field trip. I went on one field trip. I'm like, I'm not a field trip mom.
I'm
I,
out.
I would rather stick hot pokers in my eye and go on another elementary school field trip. But there were other moms that was their jam.
Yeah.
So you know what? I'm not going to feel guilty for saying I'm not the field trip mom, when there were other things that I was like, yes, I'm that mom. I'll do that. But again, it's like releasing the guilt. And then my calendar allowed me to see, okay, if I say yes to that field trip, here are all the things I'm saying no to.
Mhm.
And I don't even want to go in the first place. So,
Right.
maybe there's a better use of my time.
Yeah, I love that. So in those, like, you listed three of the things, but like you did commitments and like your mommy time kind of and then your me time. So then are you actually saying like if you own a business, like it comes after all of that, like that you're scheduling all that. I love that because so many people I think they're putting that first or like all their kid stuff and then they're putting their business stuff and then it's like, well, why don't I have any time for me? Well, because you've got your priorities wrong.
Yeah. And one of the things I always try and tell people is, especially business owners, because I struggled with this early on in business, is I'm always wanting to make sure that my business isn't always getting me at my best self and everyone else gets the leftovers.
Hmm.
Right? But as business
Yeah.
owners, we're like, okay, I got to show up really good. I got to do all that. Okay, well, if I'm doing that always, then that means the rest of my life is always getting the leftovers, which means less energy, less enjoyment, less of everything. And so that's why I think it's so important to shift the order in what goes
Yeah.
into our calendar. And then, especially if you're a business owner juggling family, motherhood, and a business, it is so easy to get sucked into all the different things we want to do, the shine, the this, the that, the that. Um, when we realistically go, this is all the time I have, it keeps us in our lane. Like it keeps us from not wasting time on things that we don't need to be doing. It helps us stay laser focused on what's most important in the business. I work 20, sometimes 25 hours a week at most. And then I'm off on the summer and I'm off on Christmas break. And we run a 7-figure business in very small pockets of time, all with working moms
Yeah.
because of how we're planning our time.
Wow, that I would love to just expand on all of that. Like right there, that is incredible. First of all, your work, the hours that you're working. Second of
Mhm.
all, obviously you must have really good like automations. You have obviously very good systems set up. You probably have things that are just selling behind the scenes. So it's not like you always have to be present. You always have to be active in your business. Your business is working for you versus the opposite. So I love how you have it obviously set up for success so that you can work those
Set
hours.
to align with my core values. What I
Yeah.
said, this is what I want from, I mean, early, my first year or two in business, of course, I was, testing things out and I didn't know what I didn't know. You don't start
Yeah.
out fresh when people are like, oh, I had this idea and I became a millionaire in 3 months. I'm like, well, it's not a normal journey.
Yeah.
But I knew that in order to stay aligned with not burning myself out, with not always giving the business the best of me and my family the leftovers, I needed to find a way to create a business that supported that. And so there are things that I have very strict, had to say no to that I know would have been potentially a quick revenue hit or a quick profit win, but it would have set me up for a sustainability that I didn't want to maintain with the business. But I think I love sharing with other moms out there that are building businesses. You get to decide what it looks like for you and don't let other people's beliefs of what limitations that might bring um,
Mhm.
you from doing that.
Yeah, I think that's so important because there are so many gurus, and while the day we're recording this, like Meta went down for like a very brief moment, and so there was like panic stricken like everywhere, or like how am I going to run my business, or how what happens if it just disappears? And I love that because it's you don't have to necessarily listen to the gurus. Yes, take some pieces of advice, sit with it. What feels good for you? You don't have to follow someone word by word by word. This is because that's their journey. And like do what feels good for you and what's in alignment with you and your family because we're all so unique. And I think there's so much out there. And I know you talk about things too, like tips that actually don't work for moms. Like all these people telling you this is how you have to be productive and this is what you have to do, or you have to do a morning routine, or you have to do a nighttime routine. And it's like I don't know what to listen to, and then you're totally overwhelmed, and
I
you get
was
nowhere.
to see these single men sharing like this is the morning routine for productivity where they show themselves getting up at 5 a.m. and they have like 2.5 hours of this quiet interrupted house. I'm like, oh my God, let me throw a toddler in the mix and talk to me about how realistic that
Yeah.
is.
Right.
Make us feel like one of two things. Either one, we're doing it wrong. Like, why can't I make that morning routine work? Like, that's not helping me. Or two, subtly, what they're doing is showing, oh, well, I have young kids. I can't do that. Therefore, I will not be successful or productive.
Mhm.
That needs to be true. Like, none of it needs to be true. I don't
Yeah.
meditate. I don't do yoga. I don't do any of that in the morning. I have a great morning routine that serves me and my family at the stage of life we're in.
Yeah. Now is that blocked off as, like, your me time? Like, or is that part of your mommy time?
Like for me, that's just part of my unavailable time in the morning of
Yeah.
when I wake up to when I sit at like, I'm usually up, well, I'm dealing with early wake ups with menopause right now, so that's a treat. But anywhere from like 5:30 to 6 usually is when I'm getting up, but I'm not like starting on my workday till 8:30 or 9.
Yeah.
Everything that's going on during that window.
Hmm.
But some of it is serving me. Like very silly, but it aligns with my personality type. I have a cup of coffee and I do 3 of the puzzles in the New York Times app every single morning. That is how I start my day while my dogs are eating and going outside. But my personality type aligns with one where doing logic puzzles first thing in the morning actually is a really great way for me to start my day. It might
Hmm.
be a terrible way for someone else to start their day. But again, that's 5 to 10 minutes. And that is how I start my day every day right now.
Yeah, I love that. And I started using an app called Lumosity, and they have those puzzle brains and logic thinking. And I could sit on there, and they have different ones where I'm like, that's not my thing. But when you find those ones that really work for you, and you're like, this is challenging, or you want to beat your score, I'm like, I want to beat my
That
last
one's
score.
how many guesses can I get to my Wordle today? But again, and I know this because I know my personality type, like the Myers-Briggs traditional personality type. So I know what types of activities suit me best to kind of fuel me for the day. But a year ago before we had the puppy, my morning routine looked different because now there's different needs there. But I'm always making sure that before I'm in service to others in the morning, namely my children and my spouse. The dogs, it's a
Yeah.
little bit different, you gotta let them out. Um, but before I'm in service to any of those people, I'm doing something for me.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be an hour-long meditation or yoga session. It can be something as simple as a cup of coffee and a Wordle, or for some people, journaling. Maybe it's listening to music, but it's notice I'm not doing anything to serve anybody else for the
Mhm.
first little sliver of my day.
And I think it's really important too, because this podcast is for moms too, to realize that there's different seasons in your life. So, like when your daughter was like a toddler versus when you were homeschooling versus now that she is in school full time, just looking at that and giving yourself permission to know that like your schedule can change, like your priorities, they may just shift around a little bit. But your values are probably still going to be there, but knowing that like, okay, just because Megan's like, okay, here's your things, here's your list, here's what, no, you change it, you shift, you reassess. Do you recommend looking back at your priorities, or different things like a quarter, a year? Like, how about that?
Yeah, so I teach people 4 levels of planning. So we start with weekly planning. Notice there's no daily planning. Daily planning keeps you exhausted and overwhelmed. So we
Mm.
start with the foundations of teaching women how to create a plan for the upcoming week that accommodates all the roles you play in your life, including just time for yourself. But there's a skill you learn on how to build in the right level of flexibility you may need in your season of life. Mine has changed over the course of motherhood for 13 years, right? With a toddler dropping a nap, I needed to build in a lot of flexibility. Right now, less flexibility. But these are all skills that we learned. So then we know how to build that into our plan. Because I'm the first to say the plan I create on Sunday for the upcoming week never goes exactly as planned, but it's built in a way to absorb that and still
Yeah.
make sure that everything gets done. So we start with weekly planning, then we go to monthly planning, then we learn quarterly, then we learn annual. And what's really cool is I teach people starting from the bottom because we got to get out of the weeds. There's no
Yeah.
point in setting some 12-month strategic, awesome life plan
Yeah.
when you can't get out of the hamster wheel of day to
Yeah.
day. So we start getting out of overwhelm and kind of mastering that weekly and monthly. Once we have that, now we go longer term because now we know how to accommodate those
Mhm.
things to our plan for the week. So I have everybody reevaluating their core values and principles every quarter and every year. That's kind of part of
Mhm.
our more of our longer term planning process.
Yeah, I love that because you have to build that foundation first, right? If you're like looking far ahead and you're like, this sounds great, this is what people tell me to do, but you're like, I have no foundation, like it's quicksand. Like you're going to be back in the
Yeah,
next day.
I get very frustrated when I see a lot of, goal setting or long-term planning workshops and stuff out there. They happen a lot, usually in Q4, Q1, and I've been to them where like you leave so fired up, right? Or even maybe you go to a conference, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do these 50 things. But then they leave you without kind of hanging because they don't give you the skills that you need to say, now, how do I actually fit this in to my day-to-day life that is already kind of booked from sun up to sundown? So that's why, people chat with me and they're like, okay, we'll have this big long-term project. I'm like, well, hang on, we'll get there. But first, you've got to have the foundation in place to know how to prioritize that against everything else and how to create the space to work on it. Otherwise, all you're going to do is get really excited about something that a year later you're going to feel really crummy about because it's one more thing that didn't get done.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. So I do want to ask you, because that lady asked you many, many years ago and you didn't have an answer. What do you do for fun? I just have
So,
to know.
yeah, my latest adventure, which I'm loving, about a year and a half ago, I started taking cello lessons for the first time. I've always wanted to learn how to play the cello, never known. So I rent a cello and I take lessons every week. And that's like my cello practice time goes in my calendar as an appointment with myself. Like I love that. I usually get to practice about 5 days a week. And I am getting back into some fun crafting stuff that I like to do as well.
So is your husband and your daughter, are they like, are you pretty good? Are you getting good?
They don't do it to me. And I have a nice little door that I can close. So
I
now,
love it.
after me doing that, it inspired my husband to reconnect with his childhood. So he got a drum set. So I don't think he gets to complain about my
Not
child.
at all. Not at all. Is your daughter, does she do band? Is she doing anything in school?
She not at her school. The
Not
school
yet.
is
Okay.
too small to support it, but she takes violin lessons just
Oh
for
my gosh. You're going to have a band. Who's the singer? Who's going to sing?
nobody. And yeah, the three of us all we work very independently. It's just
Okay, okay. Okay, that's fine. That's amazing. I've been thinking about doing learning guitar because I just think it's so beautiful. So I just need to do it and start just take
yeah.
lessons.
And it's funny because I was doing I run a big annual planning event. And I was sharing with the women that had been in my planning community for the year, like, oh, and they had seen that I've this list of me wanting to learn the cello, and they'd seen it sitting on there for 2 years. And they kind of gave me the nudge. They're like, the second year we've seen that. And I'm like, you're right. And
Wow.
one day I went out and I was like, all right, I gotta go find a teacher and do
I
this.
love it. I love it. Oh, good. Well, I had to ask you that, of course, to like follow up and see how you're doing with that.
Yeah. Now I could come up with a million different things that
Cool.
I
Cool.
do for fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I have loved this conversation. Is there anything that you haven't shared or you feel like is on your heart that you just want to share to the mamas that may be listening?
Yeah, I want to share what someone said to me once in passing, and it wasn't even talking about necessarily planning, but it was spoken to me at a moment in my life when I really, really needed to hear it. And she just paused and said, Megan, you do know you are worthy of support.
Mhm.
And I feel like every mom needs a banner in their home every day, reminding them that they too are worthy of support. Because I think
Mhm.
it's so easy for moms. Oh, it's just easier if I just do it, right? I'll just do it. I'll just do it. I'll just do it. And when we look at social media out there today, it's so easy to feel less than, right? If we're not super momming it or whatever. Um, I would love to see a shift in people being very honest about what they don't do and what they get help with and how they get supported to make it more the norm that we can reach out and seek out support that we need.
Mhm.
So I would just tell
Oh,
everybody listening
that's
that, you're worthy of support too.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you. I do think it's definitely needed. We need to hear that because there is that invisible load, that we as moms just take on. And so it just can be easy to be like you said, I can do it. Nobody can do it as good as me. I'm just going to do it myself. It's easier than waiting for my child to pick it up. I'm just going to do it myself. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Awesome. So everyone that's listening is probably going to want to find you. So where's the best place that people can find you or your information? And I'll put it in the show notes
Yeah,
too.
so I show up, I mean, I'm on Instagram and Facebook both. I'm probably on Instagram a little bit more. You can come find me at Megan Sumrell. And obviously, if you're listening to this, you're probably a podcast listener as well. So I do have a podcast out there called Work Life Harmony on all the podcast players. And I go in and share very specific planning, time management, productivity tips on there that are realistic for women, I promise.
Awesome. Cool. I will make sure I share all that in the show notes. And last question for you. I ask every single woman that comes on, what is something that you love about yourself right now? And there is no right or wrong answer.
I would say that I am letting go. I am learning to let go of people pleasing. And it's been a big focus of mine. The progress has been slow,
Mm,
but I am loving that I am better today than I was yesterday.
awesome. Congratulations, because that is something that it takes a long time to do. So congrats. Well, thank you so much, Megan, for being here today and sharing all your awesome insight and being open with everything going on with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.